let's talk about my 2019 book stats.
I'm just sitting here.
Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, Book Omens. I'm Mara Lee, and I know I'm coming at this a little bit late in the month, but I wanted to talk about my 2019 book stats. I love watching people's book stat videos. I find them to be so interesting and just fun to watch. So my overall average book rating on Goodreads was 4.3 stars. Clearly that means that I am pretty easy to please as a reader. I usually am not too picky about books. I do have opinions, and sometimes I find that I don't like books that are popular that other people like. I'm sure that's the same for most people out there, but yeah, sometimes I have very strong feelings about books that other people really love. So anyway, let's just get into it. I'll talk a little bit about those things. The book that I read that had the highest rating out of the year on Goodreads was called Stu Truly First Kiss. It has a 4.91 rating on Goodreads. Now, on Goodreads, not many people have actually read this book. It only has 5 reviews on it. So it is a smaller known book. It is a middle grade book, and I love that book. It is so cute and fun. It's Stu Truly First Kiss is the second book in the series. The first one is simply called Stu Truly, and I highly recommend them. Stu is this middle grade boy. I think he's in 7th grade, and he is facing a first time crush, and he has to get a job for the first time, and he has to help out his grandma, and he has just, he's experiencing some new things in his life, as you do at that age, and it's just so fun. He lives in a small town, so there's a really fun small town vibe, and I just highly recommend that book. Actually, I highly recommend both of those books. The most popular book I read, according to Goodreads this year, was Animal Farm, which is surprising. It's a very well-read classic. The least popular book was Okay, that happened. My beautiful copy of Little Women. I think it was here. Maybe go for a lean. There we go. Okay. The least popular book I read, according to Goodreads, was a Christmas decorating book called The Christmas Book. This is actually a really pretty book. It has beautiful photography. It's a fairly quick read. Carrots. And it just has Christmas decorating ideas. I enjoyed it. I really liked it. The longest book I read was a middle grade book called Wonderstruck. It's in a half graphic, half written format, and it was, I believe, 640 pages. Because it's half illustrated, it doesn't take actually all that long to read. It's a really wonderful book. It is a historical fiction story, and it has 2 timelines roughly. It's been a while since I've read it, but I really liked it. Yeah, I highly recommend it. The shortest book I read was actually a short story called Sredni Vashtar. I have no idea if I am pronouncing that correctly. I read that story during October, and it's a short horror story. It is really funny, and I highly recommend it. In fact, it's available online, so I will make sure and link it, because it is about a little boy who starts his own religion, and it's funny. As far as 1-star books go, I had 3 books that I rated 1 star this year, which I think is fairly fantastic. That just means that I had a lot of great books that I read. So the 3 books I read that I rated 1 star were Tithe by Holly Black, Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fanny Flagg, and then Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. I know that the Cruel Prince series by Holly Black is very popular. I read the first book in that series and I actually quite liked it, so I thought it might be nice to go back and read the other books that take place in the same universe as the Cruel Prince series. However, I really didn't like Tithe. It was written in the earlier 2000s. I'm not exactly sure. I'll put it here. But it reads very much like an early 2000s book, and I just didn't like it, like, at all. So it just wasn't for me. And the same with Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. I realize that that's a very, very popular book, but I did not like it. I hated it. I think part of my issue with that book is because so many people were talking about it, and they were talking about Eleanor as being this quirky, she's so quirky and fun, and I just thought it would be a very light book. It is not a light, fun read. Eleanor is an interesting character, and the book is very well written. However, she was so flawed and she's hurting so deeply that it just really, it brought me down so very much. So I probably should have never, had I realized that Eleanor was somebody that was hurting so very much, I probably wouldn't have read the book, because I need to be careful about the things that I read. I intentionally try to read things that will that I find to be fun and uplifting, or maybe spooky and scary, but definitely I try to stay away from depressing reads because they really affect me. And so this is just a book that actually really affected me, and it was well written, but I feel like honestly it just wasn't for me. And I think it was mismarketed just a tiny bit because it makes it sound like Eleanor is this quirky character. So many people were saying it was funny, and it definitely is not. So I don't know what else to say about it. It just wasn't the book for me, really. And with Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe, I first read that book back when I was in high school, and I actually really liked the movie, and I thought the book was okay, but I had forgotten about, I don't know. I don't even know now because I read it at the beginning of the year, and it just left me feeling not quite as happy as I thought that it would make me. That's so vague. I can't even explain. There was a character in it that I very much did not like. He felt very entitled, and he was just not a good person. I can't even remember. I do like the story. I love the character. I love the two main characters. I love that they're there for each other and that they want to help each other and they support each other throughout their lives. And the murder part is really interesting. There was just this one character that ruined it for me, and I wish I could remember more, but honestly, I don't think I care enough to do that. So that is the vaguest description of why I don't like the book. And yeah, that'll just have to be enough. Oh, and back to Tithe for a moment and the Cruel Prince Folk of the Air series. As I said, I've read just the first book, but I do want to go and read the other books in the Folk of the Air series. I think since I read Tithe, I read it during the summer, I am taking a breather so as to cleanse my palate so that I can then come back to the Folk of the Air series. I want to reread Tithe since it's been a couple of years. Not Tithe. I want to reread The Cruel Prince since it's been a couple of years and then work my way through that series. Anyway, moving on. Okay, now moving on to the actual numbers of the book stats things. I read in total 263 books. Now, in saying that, I do count short stories as their own thing, and I do read a few, like if I'm in the store waiting for my children, I'll wander to the book section and read like children's books and things like that. So I have a few shorter books and short stories on this list. However, I'll go through the numbers here. In total, I read 93 more books than I did in 2018, so yay me. I'm really, really proud of that fact. My most read authors were not surprising at all, at least to me. They were Terry Pratchett, this is Reaper Man, my favorite in the Discworld series, and then Owen Colfer. I started to reread and I'm now working on finishing out the Artemis Fowl series, and I am really looking forward to his new series with the Fowl twins. And then, oh, this is a big chunker book. Rick Riordan. I reread all the Percy Jackson books this year, and I plan to start reading his other series that take place in the universe of demigods, and I'm really excited to do that. Okay, so now I made some pie charts because nothing is more impressive than when it's in the shape of a pie. So of those 263 books, 39 were short stories, 41 were graphic novels, 5 were manga, 16 were children's picture books, and then 162 were classic book format. So next is eyes versus ears. I read 221 books with my eyes visually, and then I listened to 42 audiobooks. I have a feeling that my audiobooks will increase this next year. Towards the end of the year, I felt a reading slump coming on, and so I just turned to audiobooks, and holy cow, they are so convenient and just I listened to so many. I read so many books in November and December. So, yes, my audiobooks will probably go way up this next year. As far as standalone books versus reading books in a series, I had 141 standalone books that I read, and then 122 books in a series. When you look at the graph, that is almost basically, if you like round things, 50-50 split. So I'm pretty pleased with that. All right, now for the genre breakdown. This to me is the most valuable information. I find it really informing. Hello, that's what information is. And it helps to guide me for the next year, to kind of focus on certain areas that I didn't realize that I had not read that many of. So here we go. My most read genre was fantasy at 57 books, and then the next genre after that is contemporary at 38. Then I read 23 horror and 23 humor books. I read 20 mysteries and 19 classics. There were 16 nonfiction books and 13 memoirs, 11 romance books, 9 historical fiction, 8 books of poetry, whether they were novels written in verse or just poems, 5 paranormal books, 4 anthologies, 4 sci-fi, 3 dystopian, 1 magical realism, and 1 thriller. Now, obviously, some of these books kind of, they're not just one genre, they weave in and out and of other genres and stuff like that. But when you break it down like that, I realized that I really enjoy thrillers, but I only read 1 thriller last year. And that book was The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware, which was amazing. I loved that book. So I definitely want to focus on reading more thrillers next year. And also, one of the other best books that I read this year was a sci-fi book. And in general, I don't read that much sci-fi. I read 1 sci-fi book this year. That book was The Martian by Andy Weir. I loved that book. And I definitely want to be checking out more sci-fi in the future as well. And lastly, I want to talk about the breakdown of the intended age range of the books that I read. I do like to diversify my reading. I read quite a variety of genres, and I also like to read middle grade, YA, and adult books, including a smattering of children's picture books on the side. So, I just read pretty much everything. And so the breakdown by age range is as follows. I read 72 adult books, 71 young adult books, 103 middle grade books, and 17 children's books. Clearly, I have a love for middle grade books. I am telling you, middle grade books are where it's at. They have the prettiest book covers and the best adventures. And something that I personally like about middle grade books is it has the characters going out and experiencing things for the first time. It's like kind of their first taste of freedom in life, because when you're in the middle grade age range, you're getting to get out there more, you get to see things, and I just really enjoy reading about those things. So I am not surprised that I read in the category of middle grade age range the most. All right, that is it for now. Stay tuned for next week, because I plan to talk about the best books I read in 2019. And I read some really great books, so I'm excited to be doing that video. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time in a new video. Bye.